America, good day, and welcome to another episode of Truth to Freedom Podcast. Real talk for real people. This is the conversations that we try to have, that we try to encourage America to have. Stop with the fluff. Let's sit down and have real conversations about real issues and real solutions to these issues. So I'm excited today. Again, my name is James Parker. The other half of Truth to Freedom podcast member, Mr. Quentin Williams, could not make it tonight. He had babysitting duties, so he couldn't make it tonight. But he did want me to give you his condolences and said he couldn't make it and that, he wishes everybody well. So, anyway, moving on. Tonight, America, we are talking about education again. So, this time, as I've said in past podcasts, it's always good to go to the source. We go to the source and get the truth about what's going on and not listen to all the rhetoric that the news media outlets and things and that put together. So I'm excited because I think, now this is just my opinion, America, don't get upset, but I think I got two of the best educators here in North Carolina on our podcast. So I'm excited. So let me start to introduce our first guest is a principal out at Yates Elementary. Her name is Dr. Vonda Martin-Jenkins. Good evening, Ms. Jenkins.
Good evening.
And the other extraordinary educator that we have, the wonderful and talented Miss Tiki Wrighton, and she is at the, how do you say your school?
Preeminent.
Preeminent Charter School, and she is the Dean of Special Education and Intervention. How you doing today, Miss Tiki?
I'm doing well. Good evening.
Good evening to y'all. So I'm excited because both y'all have been in education for a long time, and y'all have seen the ups and downs, and y'all have seen how education here in our area has gone from one extreme to the other. So we're just gonna have a short conversation on what's going on, what do you see are the concerns, and what can we do as the public to help make things better in education. So let's start with you, Dr. Jenkins. Tell us a little bit about yourself, how long you've been in education, and where you're currently at now, and how's things at your school.
All right. Well, thank you, Mr. Parker, for extending this invitation. We're excited to be on the Truth to Freedom podcast. I love that introduction, just getting straight to the source and talking about real issues. So again, thank you for the invitation. So absolutely, I have been in education almost 30 years. I'm entering year 29. I've always wanted to be a teacher, always, of course, wanted to do what I could to make a difference. And so right out of college, I got an early contract and I've been working in Wake County Public Schools ever since. It wasn't until I left the classroom, after 7 years of teaching, I had a really unique opportunity to go to the rural parts of North Carolina and see what education was like on the other side of the state, where lots of students were underperforming, under-resourced, underserved. And that's when I started looking at the equity issues that, take place in our state. And it's also what piqued my interest in becoming a school administrator, just because I knew that there were wonderful, bright kids in all parts of our state, but they didn't all have the same opportunities and have the same highly qualified teachers. And so that's what really got me interested in school leadership. And I've been loving leadership ever since. I think my first assistant principalship was in 2007. I lose track of the years, but this is my second school that I've had the privilege to lead as principal. And, we have the same issues probably that you hear and that you read about. And Tiki, I think, is at a charter school. But I think when you hear her story, you'll probably hear a lot of commonalities, as it relates to staffing and parents getting involved and where's the community sometimes when you really need for them to rally around you and support. So by and large, we still have lots of hills to climb. Education has never been easy, right?
Right.
But now more than ever, it has become a little bit harder, more complex, and you're having to deal with a lot of challenges without those highly qualified teachers that you used to have. You kind of mentioned earlier staffing, money, funding. Going into teaching is not attractive as it used to be, right? You were back in college, you would look around and, teacher education programs were thriving. Lots of people were going into education. Now, there are so many teacher education programs at the college and university level, they're dwindling, or they don't even have a department of teacher education because no one wants to go into this profession for lots of reasons, money being one.
Right.
It's a very high cost of living, inflation's going up, and teachers just aren't getting compensated for all of the things that they have to do. And so that is a little bit about me and a little bit about what we're facing as school leaders.
Awesome. Yeah, I, I, it just baffles me how our leadership, from the governor on down to our school boards, how they can't seem to realize you get what you pay for. And I'm nothing against people. I'm just saying, but you get what you pay for. And if you're going to be on the lower end of the scale, your bright and your best are going to leave. And you have the ones that stay, and then it's like you got good teachers, because in y'all cases, y'all are hanging in there. Y'all are like the cream of the crop, still there, hanging in there, doing the job. And thank God that you are willing, because just imagine if everybody with the skills and talents to be a teacher and an educator, look, no, I'm going to Texas where they're paying good, or I'm going wherever, then we're just left with people that just want a job. And so, they're just working to be working. And their heart won't be in it, their dedication won't be in it, and who ends up suffering are the children. So
Mhm. So let
so
me
we
say
get it.
one other thing, and then Tiki, jump right in. I want to hang on to something you said, Mr. Parker, about people not realizing, like, when will they realize? But maybe they do realize, and that's not where their values are, right? And so when you think about the people who are making these decisions
Mhm.
about what's happening in schools, lots of them are out of touch somewhat. A lot of the lawmakers, they don't have their children in public schools,
That's right.
maybe not even charter schools. Perhaps they're sending their kids to private, right?
Hmm.
And so sometimes people making decisions, they don't have anything to lose with the decisions that they make because it doesn't impact them. So I wish I could blame it on ignorance, like, they don't know how critically important education is, but I'm also wondering if it has anything to do with their value system, how it impacts them personally, and maybe the decisions they make, since it doesn't impact them, they can think about putting those resources in different places.
Wow, that is a great point, and you are so right. If it don't affect you, then it's not a big thing to you, even though people are telling you it is. But again, if it doesn't directly affect you, eh, I think we should go over here. So I appreciate that. I really do. Miss Tiki, how you doing today, ma'am?
I'm great. How are you?
Everything is awesome. So let's move over to your side of the town, because you're at a charter school. So let's
I
hear your
am.
history and where you are at today.
Great. Okay, so this is going on year 24 for me. Actually, so I've been in education for 24 years. I started out as a special education teacher, which is something I'm very passionate about. I've always loved working with kids. I was always babysitting, and I teetered between this and in the health field, but children have always been my passion. And so looking at ways to help them more, I dove into students with disabilities. And so I started my career in Johnston County public schools, and then went on to Wake County public schools. And so I've worked, and most of my years of teaching was in public school. And then I actually ended up having my own school for students with autism for a few years before I went back into the classroom at Preeminent Charter School. And since my time at Preeminent Charter School, my first few years there were teaching students with disabilities. And then I was offered the opportunity to become a dean of special education and intervention. And so I've been doing that now for the past 6 years. It gives me the opportunity because I'm at Preeminent Charter School, and it's a kindergarten through 8th grade school. So we actually have two schools together. So I'm allowed to be able to see a lot of students that enter in kindergarten and exit in 8th grade. But just with being at a charter school, I've just it's different. It's different from working in the public school, but as Dr. Jenkins said, we do have a lot of commonalities. We're still struggling with some of the same issues as far as staffing. That's a big issue. As far as compensation, that plays a very big part. And then being at a charter school, one of the things that we also find is that because it's a school of choice, parents choose to whether or not they want to bring their children there. And a lot of times we find, well, I've found in my experiences, a lot of times we get students who have had a lot of issues in public school. And so they come to a charter looking for it to fix, because we don't have a lot of the, if you're in a public school, they have alternative opportunities for students to be able to go to if they need to. Whereas if you're in a charter, we don't always have that accessibility. And so we deal a lot with discipline and parenting, just because of the population of students that we have. We have a good array of students. But we are in a part of Southeast Raleigh where we have a lot of needs. And so those are some of our struggles.
Now, let me stay with you for a minute, Miss Tiki, because with a charter school, um, educate me because I'm not hip to. I know they pull money from different funds to do this. So, just actually, how's your charter school funded? Is it part of the budget? Is it funded from the federal government? Just exactly how is it funded? And are y'all on the lottery system, or do the parents apply, or how do we even get into the charter school?
Right. So we it is a lottery. So we hold a lottery once a year. Our enrollment is the highest that it's been is about 720 students. It's based off a lottery. A lot of people assume that because we're a charter school that our class sizes are smaller, which we would love for it to be. However, the amount of enrollment, our classrooms still average about 23 to 28 students in them. And so that I would say that that's one myth that a lot of people think about charter schools, is that you're going to have a smaller setting. And it could depend on the area. If you go into a, charter school that, maybe in Wake Forest, they may, smaller class size, but where we are currently, that's what we're dealing with as far as class sizes. And so as far as we are a Title I school, we are a public charter. We still follow the same Common Core curriculum standards. A lot of people have that misconception as well. We still take tests, the North Carolina standardized tests, the check-ins, the EOGs. We are governed by our own board. So Preeminent Charter School does have our own board that we meet with once a month, and they govern us. Preeminent Charter School is a part of a bigger corporation, which is National Heritage Academies, that is out of Grand Rapids, Michigan. And over through the United States, I would say we have about 48 schools and growing. I know we have a new one coming up this year in Durham that's opening up. That will be our second school in Durham. We have them in Wake Forest, Clayton. They're just all over Apex, and so it's a pretty big company.
Wow. And I know at your school, I know we've had conversations. Um, you deal with some rough students. Some of the conversations we had, I fear for your safety because you actually can get into physical altercations with these students. Correct?
Correct, correct.
Now,
And I would say partly being a special educator. That's a special educator. When you go into the career of a special educator, you're specializing in students with disabilities that have a lot of different characteristics.
mhm,
And some of them are emotional disabilities where students, unfortunately, that is part of their disability acting out. You have students with autism who, unfortunately, part of their communication is acting out. And you have to be very passionate in order to deal with that and be able to help to change that behavior. And that's something that I'm very passionate about. I remember someone always said I had the most well-behaved autistic students. We would go on field trips and things, and people just didn't understand why. But they can learn, they can achieve. It's about taking the time and being passionate and finding out how to spark that will that they have. And then, like I said, emotional disabilities. There are a lot of students who can be very aggressive, but one thing, as a special education administrator, we are CPI trained.
mhm.
And so in restraint training. And so I try my best to be very careful. But once again, we always de-escalate first. And so we try, talking as much as possible, because a lot of times students just want to be listened to. So, once again, we try not to do any of those things unless a student is endangering themselves or others. And we just try to protect ourselves, but it has been very physical. And like I said, more so post COVID,
Mhm.
we've seen just a lot of students with a lot of mental health issues. And so just trying to navigate between that.
So let me ask you this, Miss Tiki, and then we'll go back to Dr. Jenkins. So my concern is at your school, because it's identified as children's with needs and special problems and things of that nature. So how is the staffing done? Because you're I'm sure you need people with special skills in these areas, autism, behavioral issues. So you're needing teachers. You're not just needing a mathematical teacher or a reading teacher. You need teachers with that extra uh, layer of education, as far as, like you said, how to work with behavioral children, how to de-escalate, um, how to create a curriculum that's going to help these children learn and also deal with whatever issues they're going on. So, um, are you are you is one? Well, I guess one of the questions is: are you staffed to the best of your ability to handle these kids? And if not, is the board that this company runs, are they able to facilitate more funding so that you can get the proper teachers in? How does all that work?
So let me first say, because a lot of people will assume that Preeminent is a disciplined school. No, it is not. Preeminent Charter School is a regular public charter school. What I will say is, because of where we are in Southeast Raleigh, we tend to have a lot of students that have a lot of of issues.
Okay.
And being a school of choice, we don't turn anyone away. That's just not. So it's the same as public school. If you come, we're going to accept you and take you wherever you are. Um, but as far as when it comes to staffing, like for me, my special education department out of our school, out of my charter schools, I have one of the largest, meaning that out of those 670 or 720 students, 130 of them are students with IEPs, which are students with disabilities, which is a very high number when you look at that ratio.
Mm-hmm.
And so I'm staffed for 8 teachers. And the types of classrooms depend on the students and their disabilities. One thing, and Dr. Jenkins will be able to say, I know Wake County doesn't do, well, it's certain schools who have self-contained classrooms, for us, if a student requires that type of setting, we offer it, and they don't, so we offer it there at the school. They're able to receive those services right there. And so when it comes to staffing, it is very difficult because once again, you have to be passionate, whereas everybody can't take being spat at in the face, and sometimes you can say you handle it, but you don't really know until you're actually in it, right? And then you also have to have the mindset of, this student has a disability. Take yourself out of it.
Mm-hmm.
It's a disability that has caused this, and there's things that you can do that does not warrant that kind of behavior, and that restructures and reteaches them something different. But you have to be passionate about it. And so I will say, for me, it's post-COVID, I've had a lot of people who think that they can handle it and do it.
Mm-hmm.
But I remember my dad telling me years ago, when I told him that I was switching my profession to special education. And he told me it was a woman that he used to cut her hair at the barbershop. And he said that that woman told him, don't let your daughter stay in it too long, because of the effect that it can have on you mentally. Just because it does require a lot of mental capacity. And so that was her words to my dad. Don't tell her, don't stay in it too long. But I do love it. I do. I can't see myself doing anything else. But it is a task, but you have to be passionate about it. So it is hard to find those people now who are truly passionate. And like you said, it's hard to find, schools offering it. We go job fairs, they're just not there. And so it is a lot of on the job training now, which honestly does not prepare you to be in the classroom, unfortunately. A lot of, when it comes to it, is experience. You can't be taught it in a textbook. So it is very difficult.
I see. But I hear the passion and the concern in your voice. So I know you love what you do, even though it can be challenging, but you still love it. And that makes a big difference. It really does. So I
Yes.
appreciate that. Dr. Jenkins, you've been a principal over there at Yates Mills Elementary. And so during your years over there, what are two of your major concerns that you think needs to be addressed as principal at your school that you're not getting, I guess, the support that you think you should get?
Okay, so that's a very unique question. You want me to just narrow it down to two? Let me give that some thought.
Oh, there's more.
No,
Uh,
um, no, I'm teasing. So I would like to offer that I too receive federal funding, Title I funding, right? And so I am very fortunate that my budget does allow me to provide resources to my students and to my teachers and families. So, unlike other schools, I am not experiencing a fiscal challenge,
Mhm.
right? And so, post COVID, we have seen a disconnect in our parent involvement and engagement like we've never experienced before. And so I see Ms. Wrighton nodding her head like she's in agreement. We're going to have to get back to a time where parents were leaning in and being more visible, more engaged, more a part of what is happening in schools. I found so many times that parents are absolutely trusting the school with their child's education, and they're dropping them off, have a great day, and that cannot be the end of the conversation. It has to be visibility, questions, engagement, not necessarily coming to the school. We parents work. I work. I can't get off work and go to every single thing I want to go to, but technology has made it so I can still connect with you. I can still ask questions. I can still hop on a Google Meet. And if I had to narrow one big issue that I'm facing, I would say trying to find the right approach to get our parents back into the education process like they used to be. And I'll take it a step further. Even our churches, our community organizations, being that there are schools on every corner, we still don't have that involvement. We don't have people asking, what can we do to support? It's almost like everybody has gone into their separate little silos, and they're all really tunnel vision working on their issues. So it's this sense of community that is lacking, in my opinion. And we spend countless hours brainstorming, trying different approaches. Do we have it in the morning? Do we have a function in the afternoon? Do we take it to the community because the turnout is low? So we have had satellite meetings where if there's a neighborhood and we think transportation is going to be an issue, we'll take the meeting to them. And we still might not get the return on the investment. So I would say, just to sum it up, that family, and it's not just parents, right? Because sometimes parents are not even in the picture. Sometimes it's aunt, uncle, grandma, neighbor, but we need to go back to community. And then secondly, just to kind of highlight what Tiki offered, and I totally agree. I'm very concerned and worried about the talent pool. So many of our teachers, they don't have that same passion that you heard when Tiki was talking, right? It could be an ends to the means. It could be a fallback. It could be like, well, I've done some other things and I hear that you all need teachers. And I don't even have to have all of my qualifications at this point because you're so in need of a teacher that you'll take me. Even without all of the qualifications, 20 years ago, half of the people we probably would not hire, right? But we are experiencing a nationwide, district-wide, citywide teaching shortage. And if you don't think that is going to impact the outcomes of student achievement, when you take people who don't really have the passion, they didn't really choose this, they kind of stumbled in it, then they don't have that same teacher preparation, years of coursework and how to plan a lesson and how to engage students and how to build background and how to teach in a variety of ways and make learning relevant and make it exciting. People are not necessarily going the extra mile for what they're getting paid. And so all of those variables play a part in the outcome. So when you look at scores, when you look at achievement rates, be not surprised because you're going to get out what you've put in, what you've invested in. And the people that you are trying to shape. Wrighton, you might attest to this. The sense of loyalty that people used to have working a job has changed over the years. I'll tell you a quick story. I have a new teacher with me. Well, I'm going to back off of this story just in case there's some identifying variables, but I'll just say this. There are people who will join you and stay for 5, 6 weeks, and another opportunity will present itself and they will leave, right?
Yeah.
And so there was a time teachers they would not fathom packing up their belongings and leaving their students. It doesn't necessarily, they don't know when a replacement might be hired. There's a possibility that one year I had a sub the whole year because I could not fill the position. There was no one out there that I was going to put in front of kids because if you couldn't teach my child, I'm not going to hire you to teach anybody else's child. And so, it used to be an era where the professional would weigh the pros and cons and should I leave my kids right now? What will happen to them if I leave? Will they get a quality education? And now we are experiencing and dealing with just teachers of a different era, and they will leave, and that could leave some gaping holes and the students suffer. So, just to sum up my responses, I would say the lack of engagement from the families and the community. And I would also say the caliber of our teaching pool is very concerning and should be very concerning for anybody who has connected the dots that these students who graduate from school, they're coming to live in your neighborhoods. And don't you want them to be well educated and well rounded? So, kind of going back to what you said earlier, it seems like not only the people who make the decisions would lean in, but it seems like community members would lean in. It seems like families would lean in and say, I need to be out of that school. I need to figure out what's happening in the school. If somebody holds an education forum and they're saying, come in and we want to share updates about the school, they need to come. But we're in a time where there's something that's not connecting, where you can talk, they could see a school in crisis. They could know that schools are on fire with teaching shortages and behavior issues. You can turn on the news and see kids bringing guns and they're fighting, but it's something missing because it doesn't prick the hearts to make people do anything differently. So it's a very we're in a very different place, and for us who we're entering almost 25 and 30 years in this. We've never been here before. Um, Never. And we don't necessarily have all the answers, but I also know that it's going to take a collaborative effort. It's going to take a lot of us to get together and figure out, is this what we want? And if not, what can we do differently? And I'm wondering if everybody's waiting for someone else to fix it. That's not going to happen. And so I think we're in a time period where we need to search and, start where you are and say, is my child, or are these people in Southeast Raleigh or in this area, let me look up their scores. Let me look and see how they're performing in school. And then you'll notice some discrepancies. Why is it that way? Let's talk about it. And until we take matters into our own hands, instead of thinking that someone's going to come in and swoop and save the day, I'm not necessarily sure that things are changing if we don't lean in and start, changing some of those issues from the ground up.
You bring up a great point. Honestly, you hit the nail right on the head, and I also wonder too, um, how you're like if you have a open house or there's a school board meeting, why there's not standing room only. With some of the stuff that goes on and some of the policies that get passed down, I'm not understanding why people are not more outraged because The crazy thing is they talk about education, they talk about how it's important, they talk about how these are our future leaders, and we have to do this to get our future leaders ahead and all this other stuff. But yet there's nothing put in place, and you don't see the concern as people make it seem to be, because when we have school board meetings and things of that nature, nobody's down there. Nobody goes. There's never an outrage about some of the stuff. And I know I was talking to Ms. Wrighton, um, because I was told I had to ask her this, because I was told now schools and some schools are now bound to what they call them, fur babies or something, and like kids that identify as animals and all this other stuff, that you had to entertain this. And I'm
The
thinking to myself,
furries?
how in the world did something like that get passed? I'm a
He
That's
said,
funny.
go on, Miss Wrighton, go ahead, because
no, no, no.
But I will say it's where I am too.
Mhm.
It's not happening in one part
Right.
of
but that's just how you supposed to do. So on top of trying to get some kind of education that
mhm,
day, you dealing with all these outside entities coming in
mhm.
that you have
Almost
to
definitely.
entertain on top of just being a teacher.
Almost definitely. Almost definitely. And anybody who walks in the door thinking that they can just be a teacher, then you're so wrong. Because it requires so much more than that. You know, you're an aunt, you're a grandma, you're a counselor, you're a social worker, you're a cafeteria worker, because so many times, can I have a snack? I have to keep stuff in my office constantly, because it's gonna be a handful of students who by the end of the day who come by asking for something to eat, you know
Mhm.
and like Dr. Jenkins was stating, we aren't in the same fiscal situation, so we are hurting in those areas. I look at, and like we said, we've been talking post COVID, lawyer. I can remember our Thanksgiving boxes from donations being filled to the rim. This year, when I walked by each hallway, I was saddened about the number of items that were missing. It was there; those containers weren't full, those boxes weren't full. And like I said, we're seeing a lack. Like when we talk about what my concerns are, once again, I agree that parent engagement, that parent involvement, you have some, they're not all, but the some that do it don't outweigh the ones that are not. And so there's a deficiency.
Mhm.
And it affects everything. And so that's very hard, that parent engagement. And like I said, since COVID, we've tried to make things very accessible. Like I said, you don't even have to come, just pick up the phone. You won't even do that. I had a parent board meeting, student with behavior. Show up at the board meeting, at least advocate for your child.
Mm-hmm.
That parent did not show up at the board meeting, and that child was expelled for the remainder of the school year. So that shows you what level of care we're dealing with. That would never happen. Advocate. I want my baby in school. He needs to be in school. No, just didn't show up. Got the email. He's gone for the rest of the year. That's the kind of lack of parent involvement that we're seeing. And like it's affecting the classroom, it's the level of students. Now, you think if you're dealing with parents like this, where's your student motivation coming from? Because parents no longer hold the ones that, not all, but the ones that we're dealing with don't have that same passion and drive for their students to do. So therefore, the students begin not to care, and they're no longer motivated. I remember when I first came to Preeminent, trying to, it was halfway through the year, so I was trying to win my students over and try to get to know them. Offered them a pizza party. They looked right at me and said, "My mama can buy me some pizza. You can keep that." Oh, whoa. So then I knew it was going to have to be something else. It was going to have to be something else that needed to be done to reach these students. So then I dove into building and fostering relationships. I'm not just Dean Wrighton. I have students who, and I've never thought I'd walk in a school and somebody say Miss Tiki, but that's how they see me because I'm more than just Dean Wrighton. So it's Miss Tiki, I need this. Aunt Tiki, I need that. Because my parents aren't here, and so then it came to a point where I had a student to say, I'm gonna take this EOG just for you. Nobody else. I'm gonna do it because you asked me to. And if that's what it took for her to take that test, so be it. Please, babe, do it for me. Do it for me. Because there was no other outside motivational factor that was important to her.
Mm-hmm.
And so we have to get back into our parents being more involved and caring about their child's education. You look at it now, you ask students nowadays, what do you want to be when you grow up? It's baffling. It's baffling. When we were in school, oh, physical therapist. I want to be a doctor. I want to be. You don't hear that anymore. And that's very disheartening.
Wow.
Very disheartening. Well, what do you want to do? Like working at, and it's nothing wrong with working at McDonald's, but the standard is not there anymore.
Well, everybody wants to be a social media star now, so I guess they think that's the path that everybody takes. I can
And
be
I
a
would
YouTube star.
agree. And I will just like to point out that as you're talking, Miss Wrighton, you are describing some of the very same issues that I'm having. I'm 5 minutes away from Cary, right? In a different neighborhood, different demographics, but it just underscores that some of these issues that are plaguing education, they're universal, right?
Mm-hmm.
So that you might have a different degree, or I might have a different degree, right? I might be dealing with entitlement. I might be dealing with class issues, right? But the thing is, education is in trouble, right? Regardless, charter school, public school, with maybe a more elevated budget, good leadership in place, very good teachers in both of our schools. But that's not all it takes to improve education, not in our city, not in our state. It's going to take lots of essential partners at the table. And it also needs a common vision. What what is it that we really want to see happen? And I think that kind of goes back to let's call it let's call it like it is, right? Some people do not value what's happening in schools. And I'll give you an example. If a parent can say, well, my child can read already, and I have private tutors, so I'm really just sending them to school for social reasons, right? That's not the same as somebody who's really depending on the teachers teaching their child. That child knows the curriculum already. They're traveling, they're being exposed to different things. They're only coming to school. I chose you because I love your diversity, right? And I want my kids to be in a school with lots of different people and just to socialize. So we might have some competing values, you know, and over the years, even my definition of a good education has shifted because it should not just be about learning facts to get into a college, right? Or to get good grades. I view education a little differently the older I've gotten. I want them to go to school to have to grapple with some subject matter causing them to think critically. I can go to kids nowadays they can fly through school. They have the internet. If they have a quick wit, and some of our kids, through all this technology, they can retain information just as fast. They've had to learn video game codes. They've had to learn all of these different abbreviations, and so they can quickly recall.
Mm-hmm.
It doesn't require any thinking to have a fill in the blank test, not fill, or multiple choice, define this. Oh, I remember that. That does not measure true learning. Can you take what you've learned? Can you apply it
Apply it.
differently? Can you explain it? Can you connect it?
Mm-hmm.
But to leave school and never learn how to problem solve and critically think, so it's just so complex. It's so
Mm-hmm.
complex, but I'm still hopeful. I'm still
Mm-hmm.
optimistic
Mm-hmm.
that we'll figure it out. If not,
That's
we'll wish we
Right.
had.
And you know what, Dr. Jenkins, just like you were saying, and people don't realize, without those critical skills, once again, these are the people who are going to be your neighbors. These
Right.
are the generation who's coming before us. We see kids, right now, even when it comes to paying bills, taking care, life things, critically thinking. What am I going to do in this situation? They don't get those skills. And
Hmm.
so then it affects them in adulthood,
Yeah,
right? And
absolutely.
the cycle continues.
Oh, it affects them all right. I knew we were in trouble. Me and Melissa, my wife, was at Target. No, what's the other one? Kohl's. And we get to the counter to
Hmm.
check out, and the ticket came up to 22.25. So she gave the lady the 30 and a quarter. And she
Hmm.
looked at my wife like, why'd you give me this quarter?
See?
And I was like, do you not understand? Now you just give the dollars back. That was the 22.25. Could not get that to the point. Melissa was like, yo, give me this. Here. Now go ahead. Because she had to
Right.
do it on that
Mm-hmm.
computer and
Yep.
let that computer tell
Mm-hmm.
her what to give back in change, because she could
Yeah.
not figure out
Mm-hmm.
why that she
Mm-hmm.
gave her the
Mm-hmm.
25 cent with
Mm-hmm.
the.
Mm.
I
And
feel like
then, not to even mention, you probably messed up her anxiety because she, that mental health, with
That put her on the
kids
spot.
nowadays, you then messed up her anxiety, and she
Yeah.
probably, couldn't breathe after you all left
And
because they
might
just can't handle anything anymore.
I
They
was gonna
can't.
say she might have to take off for the rest of the night.
She probably did. I mean, because they can't work, they can't handle it. That stressed me out too much. It
Yeah.
and
stressed me out too much.
you're probably right, and it was just sad. But then I tell you another situation. This was the Chick-fil-A on Glenwood Avenue. Um, their actual computer system went down that particular morning. I go in there for breakfast, and they're handing out food. Okay, I said, well, how much? I mean, the manager said, just go ahead and take it, because the computers are not up, and frankly, they can't count. So just take the food, because we'll be here all day trying to count change, whatever. I was like, that is so sad. So we just took a loss this morning, of who knows how many hundreds of dollars, because y'all people can't count money, and you didn't want to. This is where we're at. This is
Mhm.
crazy. But
You better believe it.
to tie things up, and again, thank you all for joining me today. Let me run this scenario, because then I want to ask y'all two last questions. Back when we was in school, we had um we had nursing programs, we had trade classes. They taught home ec. They taught you how to sew. I mean, they taught all these basic, like you said, all these basic life skills on top of education. Um, and I remember the year the year I hit high school and graduated, they actually had a program for nurses, that you could take these classes, and in the summertime you would go to the community college and intern and all this. When you graduated, I think you only had to go 2 years in college, and you had your
Mhm.
associate's degree or something, or you was already certified. But it was like you can go to work. I mean, this was like keeping the job force filled with skilled labor because these people were actually doing the work all through high school. Then when they got out of high school, they was already trained to do what they needed to do. And now it seems like all those programs have gone away for the most part. I don't even know of any school that teaches trade anymore because the trade industry is hurting. They want HVAC people, electricians, plumbers. They don't have any no more because they're not training them to do it anymore. So I ask you, ladies, I'll start with you, Dr. Jenkins. Um, if we don't fix this, where do we end up at? If we don't fix this, as if something's going to collapse, I mean, at some point, we're just going to be putting out people, into the streets to do whatever. So if we don't fix this, if we don't come to some kind of common ground, if we don't get these parents to realize that you need to get involved, the communities need to get involved. We need to go back to where when I walk down the street and Miss Jenkins sees me and she see me doing something, she beats my butt. She calls home, tells my mother. When I get home, my mother beats my butt because I was doing something. If we don't get back to that community, where are we going to end up at? What's going to happen, Dr. Jenkins?
Well, Parker, I think that we know the answer to that question.
Mhm.
It's not going to end well with where these children grow up to one day be adults. Okay. I think, and going back to what you said about the trade schools, I will say there are programs, there are very few and far between. You will have to search high and low, but you would be surprised. I can think of one high school right off the top of my head that is still it's a public school right here in Raleigh that you can still graduate with cosmetology, auto mechanics, but it's not as common. Like you're talking about a time where that was widespread, like that was everywhere. It's not there. Now, I can say this too. If there's not a lot of demand for such programs, like you kind of alluded to, and Ms. Wrighton, you talked to, where's the advocacy? Where are the people showing up and saying, my students or certain students, they don't all want to go to a 4 year. They want XYZ. We want more of these types of programs. Squeaky wheel. But we have to lean in and go down like other people signing up for public comment and standing before the mic, talking every single board meeting. And guess what? Things are happening, right? So going back to, what should we do or how might we look at this differently? Asking passionately for what it is you want. But you would have to be you would have to be an engaged partner in order for that to happen. And then I would say, who is we? How are we going to, what do we establish the we? Define who's we? The people who don't even have kids in the public schools anymore? Or the people who are sending their kids to school every day? And the answer is it's all of us.
Yeah.
And and we have to figure out who's in our community. Now, do we have a community who's still passionate from your business to your school to my neighborhood to my church? It might not all be under one roof. It might need to be a convening of lots of different people, right? So you follow the money. A lot of people now are moving those dollars into private schools. Should we start thinking about those who are really passionate about, the advancement of our students so that they do have a really high quality education? Should we think about starting something, right? Because you can control something that you own. sometimes you can talk all day long, but you won't beat that institution. So if we're not pleased with what's happening in all 120, 90 schools or whatever, be concerned about the one that you create. So, again, it's time for some different, innovative approaches because this is not the first year education has been in crisis. Education has been in crisis for as long as we've gotten into it, right? And so the question is, so what are we willing to do about it? And it all starts with moving from talking about the problem to, so how do we act upon it, to make some change?
An action plan. You are exactly right. Sister Tiki, what do you have to add to that?
Wow. It is, as I sit here and I just try to think about it, that's a hard thing because it's different types of parents now. And they don't want you to say anything to their child. So that returning is not an option. It's just really not an option. And I think that now, like Dr. Jenkins said, we have to find more new innovative ways to be able to reach them because there's so many socioeconomic and factors that we're dealing with. And it's the world, unfortunately, it's the world that we're living in. It's the world that we're living in. So when the only way I can fathom it is to continue doing what I can and where I am. And because it's a lot. I just can't, like it's going to take a lot. But to get people back on board in that way, it's hard because the motivation, we're struggling with motivation. So how do you motivate those? Like I said, I can't, once you leave me, I'm not in control, right? We can offer you so many incentives. We can say, hey, you get to wear jeans. Hey, you get to, we gonna have a food truck outside. Parents come bring them. We're gonna feed you dinner and give you this information. We've thrown away food. So what is it going to take? What is it going to take? That is the question.
Yeah. Well, like Dr. Jenkins was saying, I do believe, and I know she can chime on this if she would like to talk about it. I think one of the movements that we will have to start doing in churches and local organizations will have to start driving this, and that is to start their own programs.
Yeah.
I think that when these organizations can pool their money together, that they can create programs that will be, one, efficient, they'll be beneficial, and you can bet your bottom dollar you're going to get your money's worth out of it. If it's not a free program, if you have to pay a little bit for whatever the case might be to support that program, but you can bet your bottom dollar you're going to get every cent's worth out of that program. And I say that because I know that Dr. Jenkins is in the process of developing. She really already has developed it. It's just a matter of getting the working movements of it. A summer program for Southeast, and I didn't know if you wanted to talk. We hadn't talked about. I didn't know if you wanted to talk about that program real quick, or what's your goals for that program.
Sure. The summer program is, like you alluded to, it is a direct response to what we feel the needs are, right? This is a classic case of not necessarily waiting for someone else to come in and give the students in the community what they need. We, being a pillar in the community, we took a look around and we have put together a very solid structure where, going back to what you talked about, those life skills, Miss Wrighton, those trade school types of, you know, initiatives where we would have the auto mechanic come over and teach the kids how to change their oil, and we would have the health and beauty come over and talk about how to just take good care of our health. Absolutely. That is something that we're looking forward to, rolling out in 2025, where we partnering with other people, not just from a church or, from one group or agency, but tapping into the community and doing what we can. And so that you're right, that is a classic example of not necessarily waiting for someone to say, "Hey, we're starting a program." This is some of this is if we want it done to better enhance the lives of the students in our community, then we're going to have to put our money right where our mouths are, and we're going to have to roll up our sleeves and do some of the work. So we're excited about, reaching out and finding space and resources and connecting with community partners to help this come into fruition for 2025.
Awesome. All right, America, you heard it. It's a great program. If you want to invest, all you got to do is reach out. If you look into the description, you'll see the Truth to Podcast email. So you can email your information and I'll forward it over to Dr. Jenkins, and then y'all can connect so that you can support a great program that's going to help our children grow, learn, and be prosperous society members. Is what we all want. We don't want
That's
people
exactly,
walking around.
that's right.
I don't think that nobody realized that the homeless population, a chunk of that is young folks. If you ever just go down the street, and if you see a young person pulling a luggage behind him, most likely he's homeless because they're just not going to be walking around the street with a luggage bag. So it's a lot going on. We can fix it. We just have to make the effort. So America, we can fix a lot of these problems. A lot of the stuff that goes on, if we just for some reason COVID just wiped everybody out for whatever reason. COVID just sent everybody in all these different directions. And then once COVID kind of got over and we were on the other side of it, now it's like a whole new universe. And we, like they said, we have to find different ways to engage people because they're not engaging no more. It used to be like Sister Tiki said, when you say you're gonna have food, you couldn't keep people away. You run out of food because all you do is say food, and they was
Right.
coming. Now you tell them food, and they still don't show up. And so, what do we do? Well, the one thing, America, I'm gonna tell you, the one thing we don't do is we don't quit. We
That's
don't
right.
quit,
Right.
and we have to just keep we have to keep it gets frustrating. I know it gets frustrating. You get mad, you get irritated, all the above. But I think as long as we're pulling together, pulling our resources, we're on the same platform, we're on a common goal, and that is to help our children, to give them the best education possible, to help them thrive and be successful once they get out here on their own. That's really the common goal for everybody.
That's
Um,
right.
so if we stick to that, it don't matter who we are, white, black, Hispanic, Asian, it don't even matter. We can all pull together, pull our resources together, and we can make a difference. We just have to pull together and put the effort for. And again, don't quit. Just keep pushing forward. And at some point, we will make a difference. I think this school that Dr. Jenkins and them is putting together and getting ready to implement here in 2025 is probably one of the best things that I've heard in a long time. I'm behind it. I support it, and a lot of other people do. And I think that program there, once it gets going, they're not going to be able to stop it. I think with the support they'll get and the success they're going to have, they'll be able to set up satellites wherever they need to incorporate them. Hopefully, get the YMCA youth program and all them on board and kind of work with them, and that's what it's going to take. And just
That's
network
right.
and get things going, and we can fix these problems, a lot of these problems, because I don't think that, to me, I can't see why we have children that go to school and they're hungry, and we can't feed them. And I don't understand why we can't address issues that families may be having. That we can't have programs where maybe the mother needs some more education, some better skill sets or whatever. Why don't we have programs to where we can come alongside with these parents and help them thrive and grow and be better parents as far as, helping with their children? I mean, it's a lot that we can do to help the problem. But again, if nobody wants to get involved, then this is where we're at. So this is where we're at. So um we've gone way over time. But this has been a great conversation. I hope
Yes.
that America, you heard what these educators were saying, and I hope that you take to heart what they were saying, and I hope that you just don't go off and whatever. Please take to heart what they were saying, and wherever you are in your area of influence, make a difference. Make a
Mhm.
difference. That's what we came up with this podcast. We're trying to make a difference. We're trying to get the conversations that need to be had, not the same old water cooler conversation, but the real root problems that what we have going on. Because the other problem is North Carolina has an education lottery that raises billions of dollars. Now they got online sports betting in North Carolina that raises billions of dollars. There's no way, no how our teachers should be paid what they're being paid, but they are. But if nobody goes to the school board, if don't nobody, nobody's protesting, if nobody's saying anything, they're not going to do anything. So
Mhm.
let's get involved, people. So that's where we're at. So, ladies, thank you so much. I appreciate y'all. This has been a great
Thank you for
conversation.
having us.
This has been awesome. I tell you. Any final words? Anything else you'd like to say? Or
No, again, just thanks for the opportunity
no
to speak
problem,
with you
Dr.
all
Jenkins.
tonight.
Yes, ma'am. I appreciate y'all. So, America, again, this is Brother Parker here at you with the Truth to Freedom podcast, real talk for real people. We appreciate you joining. Again, in the description, you'll see some links. Our email address is in that link. You can email us if you need more information with Dr. Jenkins and her summer program. Just email me. I'll make sure she'll get the information. If you want to know how to help, contact, whatever, email me. I'll make sure they get the information. So, once again, America, you know what you need to do. Real talk for real people. And until the next time, as always, God bless.